My neighbor, Mrs. Drake, was a quiet woman who kept to herself and rarely said a word to anyone. She was older, always shuffling around in her garden when I saw her, but mostly kept her curtains closed and her head down. Still, when she asked me to look after her little dog while she visited family up north, I agreed, mainly for the money, but also out of curiosity. Mrs. Drake's dog, Puff, was a tiny, fluffy bundle of white fur with the kind of bark that just never seemed to stop. She fussed over Puff constantly, and before leaving, spent nearly an hour telling me when to feed him, what not to touch, and exactly how to keep him safe. I was just a couple houses away, but she insisted that I stay the night in her spare bedroom instead of bringing Puff to my place. She had a small guest room with only a narrow bed and a wobbly desk pressed into one corner. Nothing else. I was a little annoyed by her strict rules, but figured it was only for one night. I brought over my old PlayStation, thinking at least I could watch movies or play games, but her TV was so old it didn't even have the right plugs. I ended up just lying on the bed, scrolling through my phone while Puff barked at every sound or movement. He seemed nervous without Mrs. Drake, always yelping at the shadows or scratching at the door. I tried feeding him, gave him water, but that only helped for a little while. At one point, I wandered around the house. It was cluttered and dark, filled with old wooden furniture. Her bedroom door was open, and even though she told me to stay out, I peeked inside. The room was decorated with faded quilts and heavy curtains, but what caught my eye was a large rug in the middle, covered in colorful patterns that looked almost hand-stitched. The night dragged on. Around 9, exhausted by Puff's nonstop barking, I went to sleep. I thought Puff had settled down in Mrs. Drake's room. I honestly hoped he'd find some comfort in the place he was used to. But late that night, I was jolted awake by barking, a desperate, muffled sound that seemed to echo from somewhere deep in the house. I groaned at first, just wanting some peace. "Puff, quiet," I whispered, but the barking kept going. That was when I realized the sound wasn't coming from the hallway or even the living room. It sounded like Puff was underground. Feeling uneasy, I followed the barking to Mrs. Drake's bedroom. The door was still open, but as I stepped inside, my heart started racing. The rug had been pulled to one side, exposing a small square door built right into the floorboards. It was open, leading into darkness. Puff's barking was definitely coming down there, echoing up through the narrow opening. My hand shook. There was no way the little dog had moved the rug and opened that door himself. I stared at the shadowy hole, my mind running wild with worries. Should I go after him? Was he trapped? What would I even find down there? I barely managed to whisper his name. For a moment, the barking stopped, and I waited, hoping Puff would run up the stairs. But instead, out of the darkness, a shape stirred. A man's hand gripped the edge of the opening, pale fingers tugging at the side. I froze. My heart hammered so loud I thought the stranger would hear. Everything in me screamed to run, and that's what I did. I tore out of the house, sprinted home barefoot, and woke my parents up with a flood of words, shaking and breathless. My dad called the police right away, telling them about the break-in next door. When the officers arrived, they searched Mrs. Drake's room. The rug was back in place, and the floor door was shut tight. Still, the police searched anyway. They found a hidden crawl space underneath, filled with strange old boxes and broken statues, but no sign of Puff or of any intruder. When Mrs. Drake returned the next day, my dad spoke to her. She was furious at first, ranting about strange noises and how spirits sometimes lived under her house. When he asked about Puff, she broke down weeping, blaming the strange happenings on things she called demons. We never saw the little dog again. After that, Mrs. Drake stopped talking to us. She never left her house, and all the curtains stayed closed. I never babysat a pet for anyone on our street after that. And honestly, I'm still glad I got out of that house in time. Even now, I get chills thinking about that shadowy hand and the little dog's barking fading into silence.
I've always been on the lookout for small jobs to help pay for my art supplies and materials. One thing that caught my eye was pet sitting. It seemed like a nice way to spend time with animals and make some extra cash at the same time. So when I found a posting for watching a small dog in a fancy apartment downtown, I thought it sounded like a good fit. The ad mentioned a tiny chihuahua named Lulu. From the photo, she looked delicate, pure white, with big round eyes that seemed to stare right through the camera. The apartment was in a tall building with glass windows that showed the whole city below. The woman's name was Miss Carter, and she seemed very polished and rich. When I arrived to meet her, I was struck by how clean and perfect everything was. White leather couches, shiny silver kitchen appliances, and floors so spotless you could see your reflection. Ms. Carter greeted me herself, dressed in an expensive suit, her blonde hair perfectly styled. She was very clear about Lulu's needs. "Lulu is a special dog," she told me. "She gets nervous easily and needs to be watched carefully. Please don't leave her alone for too long, and make sure she eats exactly what I leave for her." Lulu barked nervously at my feet, never straying far from her owner. The first evening was calm enough. Lulu wanted to stay close, whining a bit, but seemed to settle on my lap. I tried playing with her, giving her toys and treats, trying to keep her distracted. Everything seemed fine. Then, on the second night, things started to shift. Just past midnight, I woke to a strange noise, scratching and scraping, like nails dragging against stone. At first, I thought maybe it was a rat or mouse somewhere in the walls, but as I listened more carefully, the sound was heavier and slower than that, almost as if something big was moving behind the plaster. I sat up in bed, heart beating faster, and tried to pinpoint where the noise was coming from. It was near the living room wall, right behind the couch where Lulu sat curled up, looking tense and alert. I checked all around but found nothing unusual. The next day, I examined every wall for cracks or holes, but found nothing out of place. Despite that, I couldn't shake the feeling something was off. As night fell again, Lulu started barking more, fixating on a certain spot on the living room wall. Her barks sounded urgent and scared. The scraping sounds returned, louder than before, echoing through the silence. I looked closer and saw a tiny crack near the base of the wall. A strange, terrible smell rose from it, a smell like damp earth mixed with something rotten, something decayed. My skin crawled at the thought of what could be inside that tiny hole. Suddenly, an eye appeared from within the crack. It glowed yellow and seemed to be staring right at me. Lulu yelped, her barking turning frantic as the eye blinked in the darkness. Then, slowly, a thin, pale hand emerged from the crack, fingers long and twisted, with black nails. Before I could react, the hand grabbed Lulu and pulled her into the hole. I froze, unable to move or cry out. Her screams echoed as she vanished from sight. Silence fell over the apartment. The scraping sound stopped, but the place now felt suffocating, as if filled with heavy, wet breathing coming from the wall itself. I stayed awake for the rest of the night, too terrified to close my eyes. As dawn approached, I packed my things quietly and left the apartment. I didn't call Ms. Carter or explain what had happened. I just slipped the key under the doormat and walked away, promising myself I'd never take a pet sitting job again. Even now, when I think back to that night, a chill runs down my spine. What was in that wall? What had Lulu seen? Or what had I disturbed by sitting there? I often wonder if Lulu's nervousness was a warning I didn't understand. Maybe she sensed what no human could see. Whatever it was, I know I'm lucky to be alive, and I never want to face it again.
A gentle breeze was drifting through the windows as I looked at the clock, seeing it creeping closer to midnight. I was 17 at the time, helping out a friend of my mom's by pet sitting for the weekend. It seemed like an easy way to make some extra money before I headed off to school the next year. I wasn't expecting much, just a quiet night in a house that wasn't my own. But what caught my attention was the sunroom at the house. It had windows all around, letting in moonlight and fresh air, making it a perfect spot for hanging out late. I figured I might as well invite a couple friends to join me and make the night more fun. My friends were a few years older than me, which sometimes made me feel like the youngest one tagging along. Emily was tall and confident, probably the coolest one I knew, and Sarah had a great sense of humor that kept things light no matter the mood. We brought some snacks and drinks, nothing crazy, just enough to relax, and settled in. The family's dog, a calm Labrador named Max, seemed happy to have some company too. He lay beside us as we talked and laughed, catching up on what had been going on in our lives. For a few hours, everything was smooth and comfortable. Emily found a deck of cards and we passed time playing games and joking around. Outside, the neighborhood grew quiet, and Max was allowed out through a sliding door to roam the backyard when he wanted. His soft paw steps were the only sounds that mixed with the occasional rustle of leaves outside. But things changed when the house phone rang from the kitchen. There was something strange about that. The owners rarely used their landline, and they had told me it might even be disconnected. We ignored it at first, thinking it was probably just a wrong call. The ringing stopped quickly, but then, after a moment, it rang again and again. It was odd enough that we couldn't just pretend it didn't happen anymore. When the phone rang the third time, Sarah answered. On the other end, a man with a calm but serious voice said he had found a wallet at a gas station almost 30 minutes away and claimed it belonged to the house owners. He clearly wanted us to come pick it up right away. Sarah kept her cool and told him that we were staying at the house that night and couldn't leave, especially since we were watching Max. But the man kept insisting, repeating the same message several times, which started to feel more threatening than helpful. After hanging up, there was an awkward silence between us. We tried to convince ourselves it was just some misunderstanding, maybe someone dialing the wrong number, or maybe a prank. But the quiet felt heavy, almost like we were waiting for something else to happen. Around 1 a.m, we decided to shake the weird feeling. We popped in a comedy movie and made some popcorn. Sarah made a joke about how Max was probably the one who needed to relax the most, and we laughed softly as Max tried to sneak pieces from the popcorn bowl. It almost felt like a normal night again. But just after 3 a.m, the mood changed dramatically. I was sitting on the couch near the kitchen, watching the movie but also paying attention to every little sound. The door to the sunroom was left slightly open so Max could step outside if he needed to. It seemed safe enough. The neighborhood had always felt calm. The house was quiet except for the low sounds from the TV. Without warning, a chill ran down my spine. I turned slowly and spotted a shadow moving quietly in the kitchen. It was a figure, all dressed in black. They were slowly bending over, looking through the cabinets, completely unaware that we were watching. The kitchen lights were off, but a soft glow from a small lamp lit the scene just enough for me to see a pair of piercing blue eyes staring out from beneath the hood. Their face was almost hidden,
covered by a scarf or mask, gloves, and dark clothes from head to toe. My breath caught. I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or if it was real. I nudged Emily and whispered, "Someone is in the house." She looked over and screamed quietly, shocked by what she saw. Sarah jumped up immediately and told the stranger loudly to leave. The figure didn't rush, but calmly closed the cabinet doors and turned towards the sunroom door. We heard the click of it shutting behind him as he stepped outside. We moved quickly. Our hearts pounding, we grabbed Max and locked ourselves in a back bedroom. Emily called the police as we tried to keep quiet but calm. The fear made it hard to focus, but we knew we had to stay safe until help arrived. The officers showed up within minutes and looked through the entire house. They took our statements and kept watch outside all night, ready for the stranger to return. Despite their presence, we decided it was best to leave, taking only Max with us and leaving behind my car keys and the snacks we had brought. The house that had seemed so inviting earlier now felt like a place we never wanted to be again.